how about that pork? And eating that pork and shrimp and them scavengers. Some of y'all like that shrimp and oysters and lobsters and all the pig. You ain't got no business eating none of that according to the biblications.
Alright, so in my last video, we talked about whether or not it's okay for Christians to eat pork and shellfish. But in this video, we're going to talk about why God gave those restrictions to the Israelites in the first place. Clean versus unclean. What does it all mean? In the last video, I also highlighted portions out of Paul Copan's book, Is God a Moral Monster? And yes, I will be using it again today. Or tonight. Whatever. In Leviticus 11:1, God instructs Moses on what land and sea animals that the Israelites were allowed to eat.
The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron. Tell the Israelites, you may eat all these kinds of land animals. You may eat any animal with divided hooves and that chews the cud.
Verse 9.
This is what you may eat from all that is in the water. You may eat everything in the water that has fins and scales, whether in the seas or on streams.
So as a recap, land animals had to have a split hoof and chew the cud. Split hoof just means the animal's foot is split into two toes. Two toes. Deer, for example, have two toes as opposed to horses that have a single hoof. For those of us who didn't grow up on a farm, to chew the cud just means that an animal continues to chew partially digested food until they finally swallow it. So animals that both chew the cud and have a split hoof are considered kosher. Now as for sea animals, as long as they have scales and fins, they are also allowable. Now insects were pretty much off limits unless they had jointed legs and could hop on the ground like a grasshopper. Animals that swarm, slither, or crawl on the ground are a no-go. But why? Though? Well, I told y'all in the last video that God has a rhyme and a reason for everything, right?
That's right.
Well, the food laws are no different. In the book, Copan talks about how animals are categorized by land, water, and air in Genesis chapter 1. Unclean animals were those that generally overlapped into more than one category. Shellfish, for example, can live in the water, but also move on land. Pelicans are birds that can fly and also dive in the water.
The young pelican is perfectly adapted for plunge attacks. As he hits the surface, his legs and wings thrust backwards, forcing his bill around his prey.
Totally didn't know that. How about this? Think Robin Thicke. Notice that Robin Thicke and Paula Patton split shortly after Blurred Lines. A married man in a music video surrounded by half-naked women? What could go wrong? I guess Paula Patton wasn't feeling the Blurred Lines either, citing infidelity as one of the reasons for filing for divorce. But I digress. God is a jealous God, and God and Israel had an agreement. Blurred Lines were not a part of that agreement.
Unclean animals symbolize a mixing or blurring of categories. In contrast, the clean animal has all the defining features of its class given at creation. So animals that transgress boundaries or overlap spheres were to be avoided as unclean.
In addition to crossing boundaries, some of these unclean animals also were a representation of the curse and or death. Case in point, everybody knows the story about Adam and Eve and how they were deceived by the serpent. That being said, it's also possible that slithering animals were off limit because they were associated with the fall of man. It goes pretty deep, y'all. I wanted to say a lot more, but instead I will encourage you guys to go grab yourself a copy of this book and read it. It really is a page turner. Sheds a lot of light on some issues that we usually don't talk about in church. I really hope y'all got something out of this. Now, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and make sure you share it on your social media platforms. And if this is your first time on my channel, please subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. But until next time, guys, shalom, grace and peace. So y'all eat kosher or no?